Good morning. It's 9 a.m. Monday, May 22nd, 2023. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Motion by Jeff, second by Nathan. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is update on proposed shared city/county outdoor shooting range and possible decision on a request for a financial commitment by the county with Sheriff Quinn Reese and Muscatine City Police Chief Tony Keats. Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. This process started, initial concept, initial was 2 years ago. We came in about a year ago, give or take, started this discussion. This is gonna serve as an update of kind of where we're at and where we're still looking at going. So, all right, I'm gonna have Chief Keys talk. Like I said, he's done a majority of the legwork up to this point, so.
So for me, this project's about 5 years old when it started with the lead remediation down south of our old range, and then discussions with the sheriff of what are we gonna do next, because we had lost another range we had shot at, and then a range that they currently shoot at, they deal with some ricochet issues, and so the bigger piece was, what do we do about a training facility? So I do apologize for being a year and a half, but with the dynamics of today, it's taken that long to be able to present you with something to make a decision on. So we did agree about a year and a half ago to have MSA conduct basically a thorough workup and say what properties would be presented and would we be able to utilize for a range. We have completed our work with MSA, and there's several pieces of ground that have been identified to look at, and we have a shared cost there. We were talking about 75,000. But it looks like we came in a little under budget at 43,000, so that's a good thing, and that'll be a shared cost later, and that was the original agreement. What I'm looking today is I'm looking for a financial commitment on a range that's gonna cost approximately $2 million for a range and a training facility. This training facility will be used to conduct a lot of mandatory trainings and qualifications for both county deputies and city officers as well. These are state minimum requirements that we have to do every year. This training facility allows us to go above and beyond and provide a much safer and more effective training for the officers in our communities. We also have MSORT that has 24 members on it that we always utilize, so a couple times a year they're out training. It's the facility as well as the range piece for us. We have no facility to take 24 men and women in and do trainings, whether we're doing bias-based policing or we're doing de-escalation training. I can go down a list of training that the sheriff and I have a budget to send people to training. Well, sometimes we have to pick and choose and send one or two instead of trying to send 15 or 20. This will allow us to be able to do that and bring trainings to the community. Do you have any questions?
I'm sorry, I couldn't tell from the thing and I missed last week. Where's the location?
I can't discuss any of the locations or pricing right now. I hate to be that vague.
Nope.
But until close.
Understand.
Do you have an itemized list on that complete cost so we can see the breakdown? I mean, how many acres are you looking at?
So I will be able to explain all that to you in closed session. If we start breaking down acres and talking about pricing, there's a couple different properties that we've identified that would not be good for the city and the county at this time. But I do have all that broke down for closed session.
And your current relationship with, the police department shoots in Wilton, you mentioned?
Currently, we're in West Liberty.
West Liberty, sorry.
Yep.
And that agreement may not sustain much longer?
Well, West Liberty is also under contract, but it doesn't have a training facility. And we have an outdoor area and there's bays and we shoot that with the public. This will be an exclusive law enforcement training facility and range. With the concept drawing that you have in front of you, we're able to utilize buses, semis, tractors. We train we exceed far more than the minimum standards. We can't do any of that at West Liberty. And so this allows us to be able to do the training we need to do, especially on the MSORT team.
And this would allow our conservation officers, so it would be all law enforcement within the county. And are you anticipating that this would be offered to neighboring counties and, the smaller municipalities, things like that?
My suggestion, once we get this being built and it's established, is to sit down and talk with the sheriff and go, okay, if we have other agencies that want to be involved, what do they wanna do to buy in and be part of this, right? How do they wanna help upkeep the range? How do they wanna help do some lead remediation? What do they wanna put forth to be a part of this big project? Since you have both the city and the county putting forth a couple $1 million, I think there should be some ownership in them and their people, and especially when it comes to either having administration or sergeants and above, we have to make some stipulations so we can really kind of keep that range, the mitigation down as far as we can.
But it'll not be open to the public, it'll be strictly law enforcement, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
What do you pay currently at West Liberty now to train
I think West Liberty is $600 or $700 a year.
per individual?
No, that is for the agency.
Okay.
We do go there and we do shoot, but there's a lot of restrictions that come with that we are not used to, and that does hinder our teams. One example, we'll take vehicles from our salvage yards and we'll have them dropped off at the training facilities that we used to use. And for even patrol officers, we'll sit inside these vehicles and we'll shoot out a windshield. We'll shoot out of the windshields if they were being attacked, or we'll shoot into windshields to try to see what the ballistics do. All of those pieces we cannot do at the West Liberty range. There's just no way to do that. We would be able to do that at our new training facility.
and so, in the whole realm of thing, what are you looking at from the county dollar-wise overall in this entire project?
I'm looking for a 50% match with the city. Our hopes is not to exceed $2 million, but at some point in time, we'll probably discuss a contingency. So we're looking at probably a $1 million split, $1 million for the county and $1 million for the city. We've had Bolton and Mink also take a look at the design. That's the one that you have in front of you is from Bolton and Mink. And I'm very comfortable and confident to say we should be able to hit that $2 million piece.
What's out there in regard to grant dollars and things of that nature?
Very limited. Right now, we're trying to find grant dollars to help support the MSOR team on a complete new equipment swap for bulletproof vests and things of that nature, and we're struggling even with that piece as well, which is a $100,000 piece of the puzzle to help fund the team. So we're having a tough time with grant dollars. We do seem to be able to get leeway through our community. We've had very good support, great support from members of our community stepping up, but a lot of times, the one thing they do wanna see is the buy-in and the commitment first from the city and the county.
What kind of time frame are we looking at, Tony? When would the funds need to be, you're looking for a fund commitment, but when would the funds have to be, when do you expect to expend, or optimistically?
I would love.
5 years ago, I know, but
Right,
that
no,
didn't
right.
happen, so.
It would be great if by next spring we can start building this facility. I'm well aware that, I believe it's September is the cutoff date, as far as for farming the next year, so whatever property we'd be looking at, we'd have to have that discussion. We obviously have to have harvest, so the hopes would be spring or summer of next year to start building this facility.
I'd be curious if the NRA or Midway and those different types of organizations would have any dollars available for something like this that is driven 100% towards law enforcement. I don't know.
We did look into it. And I
Yeah, I'm
promise
sure you
I'll do
did.
it again.
Yeah, I'm sure you have, because that just seems like a natural place to look in my mind.
I have a friend that's on the board for NRA,
Uh-huh,
and as far as building, no.
yeah.
They'll help with consulting and stuff like that.
Which has a lot of value.
Right, exactly.
It does. They couldn't help consult for the type of ground we needed, and that was very specific.
Right.
For the first part. So that's why MSA helped us identify that. We may have to reach out to the NRA for completion and construction of the project, but right now I'm pretty confident with what you have in front of you. It's something that we can do now, and we can, between Eric Furness, myself, and the sheriff, we should be able to maintain a general contractor to push in the right direction.
What size of facility are you looking at on the grounds? I couldn't tell from the drawing much.
Well, we've hoped a 60 by 80, and then I've sent this out and go, man, I hope we can get a 40 by 60. It's trying to We're gonna maximize the facility with the dollars we have left with the project, so that'll be the last piece to be built, once the land's purchased and the range and the dirt is moved.
Okay, so the 2 million is land acquisition, consulting, dirt moving, and hopefully at the end you got some kind of facility. you
Facility,
can-
septic, a well, all of that is in
Oh,
there.
sure, I suppose it gets into public size stuff, which is a whole nother realm of dollars, isn't
It
it?
shouldn't. With the number of days they would use per year, the number of people on site per day, a private well and private septic should be
It
sufficient.
should be
So
sufficient,
that'll hold some costs down.
yeah, good, okay.
Quinn, where you guys train currently at Browns, I know you've been doing that for years, are you able to do all of the type of training that Tony's mentioned down there?
Depends. As he mentioned, the ricochet issues that we've had down there over the years. I've been hit by ricochets before, it doesn't feel great. More often than not, we don't shoot as much in those environments. What we've done is taken vehicles down to Island Auto, and we'll do like our less lethal, non-lethal, stuff there. Not really conducive to
What creates the ricochet issues for you guys down there at that range?
backstop.
Is it the tires?
They've tried to mitigate that over the years. Jim has done a lot for us over the years. So I'm not discounting that, but there are issues that we've had over time.
So we have shot at Island Auto, right? Like we have actually done shooting at Island Auto. We just can't do all the training that we could do with the berm. The other piece is the chemical munitions training that we do several times throughout the year, and that is not something we do at Browns.
So you'd have those type of trainings there as well, and some kind of containment processes and, okay.
Yeah. It's just different when you have your own facility and you can do the type of training that you wanna do with the structures and so on and so forth that you have. I understand completely.
And the thing that we talked about the other day was, right now, we're kind of tied to our own scheduling, where if I have a firearms instructor, we try to get the entirety of the department done in a day or two. When you're trying to qualify the number of people that we have between sworn staff, reserve staff, those correctional officers that are certified to do Fed call or Fed transports that have to carry a weapon, trying to push that amount of people through in a timely fashion doesn't work. One of the benefits of something like this is, let's say the police department has a range officer out there one day, they're doing their qualifications, I can send my guys out there at the same time, they can send their guys in at the same time. Doesn't add or doesn't become quite a scheduling nightmare for us trying to push that amount of people through, and that's something that we struggle with every year. You have one day, and then you have a makeup day, and then you have a makeup day, and then you have a fourth and fifth day to try to catch those one or two stragglers. It's pain.
What do some of our neighbors do, you know, like Louisa County, what are they doing?
So Louisa County is they utilize Browns, Jim Brown's range. Cedar County
Transfer
is
station, or landfill.
shoot at their landfill. Scott County, I don't know if Scott County has their own range, I know Davenport PD, has their range out at, the Mount Joy Airport. They have an indoor range out there. In years past, we used to shoot at Frank Nelson's off of F-70. Frank was very good to us for a lot of years. Frank passed away 2 years ago.
Right.
So we haven't been able to utilize that since then. At the time that we were using Nelson's range, Frank hosted not only the sheriff's office, the police department, Wilton, West Liberty, State Patrol, Iowa City PD was down there. Johnson County was coming down. I mean, there was agencies from, a 3-4 county area that were utilizing that.
Davenport also has an indoor range, and I have looked into that. But just one major piece of the ventilation and the backstop is like 500,000+ just for one piece. And so, and then you have to find a building to put it in, and now you can't do all that training that I just discussed we struggle with at all the other ranges, because it's all indoors and you're restricted to the types of training that you can do in those places.
I guess if sharing this information is for confidentiality reasons in the closed session, maybe we add it back to the agenda, requesting a closed session. So, because I'd like to see the itemized and break down and understand the whole project better before I'd be ready to understand it and make a decision.
The other question I would have, maybe a Kayla or Nancy, $1 million is, we don't have a lot of available funds just laying around, and the time frame, I get a little worried about how we would, the board, even if they decided, well, I think it's very important, I think that we've been fortunate over the years to rely on a lot of benefactors in and around, and our law enforcement training is very important. And I don't think you can always count on those folks being there, everybody knows that, law enforcement has gotten some bad raps in the media. I think the public has been tainted a little bit in their impressions, and I think it's gonna get more challenging for people to help us with that, and I think we need to be able to help ourselves. So I'm in support of doing something, and I think we have to figure out how the funds, where we find the funds, how we get the funds garnered,
And we had some discussion about that, and our assumption is that, we would, if you guys are interested in moving forward, probably in the next year's budget, we would bond for that. In the meantime, if there's funds needed before then, we talked about the city covering until we bonded, or borrowing the money from our bond repayment fund or something like that, and then replacing it once we levy debt.
and with the new legislation, would this be something that's under that, public referendum?
We're gonna be restricted on the amount that we can borrow, so with the project being $2 million, I'm not sure that we can bond for that.
Well, we wouldn't do the whole 2 million.
Right, but
Yeah.
it's
I think
the
anything,
cost of the
Yep.
project, so that's where we're gonna.
if we're over 750,000, I think we have to go to a public referendum
Right,
with
so
the
it
new
has to be
legislation
voted
from the
on.
county perspective, right? So that could present a challenge, even if you had the board support, public referendums are always a crapshoot. You never know. So, okay.
I'm supportive of it. There again, I'm with Jeff. Don't know where we scrape the money up at on this.
If I can, there is some pieces to this I'll discuss in closed session on some of what you're discussing right now, and how we have managed to look into that on the city side. And I do understand you wanna see an itemized, I would too. I'm just asking for a commitment with some contingencies moving forward, that if the ground that we select, we can put a range on, and a commitment to move forward, to have this closed discussion about that particular itemized list. And I don't plan on moving forward without the permission of the city or the permission of the county, and as far as keeping everybody in the loop and where we're at in that process.
Right, and we just felt like before we started the closed session process and he went to the city to talk about this, we needed to have some idea from the board about a commitment to move forward, assuming that everything's approved.
But in addition to just real estate issues, what sort of discussion items would be appropriate or available for closed sessions?
That would be,
Primarily, the real estate would be the issue.
Okay.
As far as any other work on it, you could go through the regular procurement policy steps. So it's primarily the real estate.
And
So it would be the real estate, excuse me, not primarily. So
Okay, yeah, I wondered, thank you.
I will submit a memo that I'll draft up for Jim to look at, but in that itemized list, there's a lot of disciplines that are gonna be done building this project that I don't think should be shared with anybody prior to the bidding process of doing the range work and the facility work.
and there's just numbers associated with everything, and so even the bidding process could be compromised, is what he's
No,
saying.
as long as we're doing it
So
the right way.
We met last week, and it might not hurt to talk about your timetable with the city so the board understands that. And then secondly, my conversation was, there'd been an MOU put together, a draft MOU by the city, and I looked at it and we talked about it last week, and I think if there's a desire to move forward with this on behalf of the county, we would be looking at a binding agreement for the acquisition, the construction, and maintenance of the facility, because all of those things are going to matter, at least either initially or down the road. So that was my advice in terms of the legality side of it.
Basically looking for consensus from the board, if enough of the board is in favor of looking deeper into this issue. Do I have that correct?
I think they're looking to be able to go to the city and say the county's in for up to $1 million, and the city's gonna have to answer the same question, and then that process is gonna have to go forward with finalization of some type of an agreement, and then acquisition and next steps, so,
So any commitment at this point is subject to being able to agree to all of the terms. This is, what we're looking for is just indication from the board that if we can resolve all, I mean, if we can get agreement on everything, that you guys are committed to move forward before he goes to the city and says,
I'm completely in favor of the project, but to spend $1 million, I need to understand a breakdown of what we're doing to come up to
Absolutely.
even be on board with
Yeah,
that.
so this is like an authorization to move forward up to $1 million, not necessarily to say we're approving $1 million at this point.
Yep.
We wanna see the details to make sure that that's what, if we can get it done for 500,000, then that's great.
Okay.
My plan is to come back here on June 19th, I believe is the right date for a closed session. June 1st is the city, and I think the 19th is a Monday that Nancy
Yep.
had talked about. And then I'll be back here. I will do nothing even after the city closed session. I'll be back here to discuss the closed session with you. There's nothing on this estimate, I promise you, that's gonna throw any red flags at you. I just can't share it yet.
So Nancy, what do you want? Do you want a motion?
yes. What I would like from the board is a motion to make a financial commitment of up to $1 million, subject to,
the acquisition, construction, and maintenance agreement for the project.
Yeah.
with the
What's
city.
the time frame again? I mean, what by when the million would need to be forked over?
I think that could rather be loose. We've been 5 years, 3-4 years now. If we had to look at that as July 1st next year, as long as we had the land purchased and had the steps moving forward, I don't think we're in a real crunch to say, hey, we need the money in 3 months, we need the money in 4 months. This is gonna be a
It
project.
doesn't seem real loose to me, but,
Well,
I understand what you're saying, so.
when you tell me the money's available, I guess that's when I'd accept it.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I would make that motion that we authorize, the commitment of up to $1 million for the acquisition of property and construction of a training facility for law enforcement in Muscatine County.
I've got a motion by Jeff,
I'll second it.
a second by Kurt.
What is that, can I ask what that officially binds us to?
Binds us to put up to $1 million, subject to the agreement for acquisition, construction, and maintenance to be agreed upon between the city and the county, which would include other entities in future use or use by other agencies. Trying to get all of that done at this stage, with that many players and the amount of contribution you might expect on something that hasn't happened isn't probably very realistic.
Sure.
Was our discussion.
I would just like the motion to reflect that caveat.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't obligate us to the million, it just
To the
obligates us to the
process.
It's a
process.
process. There's a lot of pieces that have to come into play for this to move forward, but without having a commitment from the board, for that desire to move forward, it goes nowhere. I mean,
Okay.
just the step to be able to acquire this property is a big step. That's something that could never happen. So, I mean,
And what has the city committed to already, or when will they do so?
The city has committed, it was to $750,000 at the first time we had looked at this. I believe we brought forth $1.4 million at the time I was here, which was probably before the MSA contract, and we discussed this. And so with the city, we're going into closed session and we're to contribute up to half of the project, which is $1 million. And then we also have that 43,000 from MSA that has to be taken care of as well.
So the city has already approved this, the equivalent of what is on the table here today?
I need to go back in front of them in closed session and discuss it. They have approved up to 750,000. We have the ability, because this was a FEMA project range, that we have the ability to bond for 1.1 million, so we had a 10% contingency. We just need council to, I need to get in front of council and discuss it with them as well. It's been 1.5 years since I've discussed this with them. I haven't had anything to move forward yet.
So I mean, if they're committing to this, if our commitment is at least contingent on them to making the same commitment at whatever level that commitment is, I'm comfortable with it. But I don't know how we reflect that in what we're saying right now, because the way the motion is phrased to me sounds like right now, we're just putting it up there no matter what.
So what I'm trying to do is be respectful of both boards.
Yep.
And the city is they're very similar. They're ready to go, but I don't wanna overstep either side, so.
And I'm just not sure where we're getting the money, so that's my other concern.
We, on the city side, we do have that part, but again, I haven't been to talk to Nancy in a while, so.
So where would we get this money?
I mean, capital projects, possibly bonding for it, we'd have to look, whatever the cities, if they said it was a FEMA, we'd have to look on what they're how they're bonding for
I mean,
it.
do we have a lot of slack in our capital projects right now? Enough to
Well, we
cover this?
have several large projects coming up,
That would have to be bumped, presumably?
probably.
I don't know, I guess I'd like to see more certainty on where we're getting the money before I agree to this. I'm all for it.
Well, Nathan, it's a chicken and egg problem. You really
I hear
can't
you.
do it until you get the details. You
Well,
don't know exactly what you're gonna
But
expend.
we can figure out what we'd be bumping.
Well, so you just wanna do nothing?
No, didn't say that. I wanna know what does this cost us in opportunity cost?
Well, I think Chief Keys has offered that on the 16th, we would do a closed session and discuss the budget. And
Can we
so,
do that in a closed
or
session?
19th to discuss the land
The
acquisition.
The land values
and
only.
certainly any values that might impact the bidding process.
Sure.
So it potentially could cover almost everything. The land is the primary, but obviously you can't discuss budget numbers for items that you would put out, for bid to the public, and get bids on, and then disclose your numbers before you did.
Sure, but if we're committing to up to $1 million, we at least need to know where that $1 million is coming from, I think.
The funding source is a legitimate question.
Mhm.
The closed meeting is a legitimate question, and the city buy-in is a legitimate question, but again, the agreement, a firm agreement for acquisition, construction, and maintenance would take that latter one into consideration. So if the city didn't agree, then there would be no step forward. So I think that one is covered. It's just it's the closed session conversation. I think you need to satisfy yourself with the budget items and
Well-
estimated dollars.
The question I have then with regard to that closed session, is the closed session gonna reveal that we might need to kick in more? Might need to kick in what is the closed session, other than the discussion of the prices that we use for acquisition? How does that change our nut in the game?
It doesn't change our nut in the game.
So, how are we paying for the nut is what I'm.
That's a different question that I
Yeah.
can't.
Right,
That's
and that's, I
that's
guess-
left with the county to decide.
I don't like making a promise before I know where the money's coming from, or what project it's gonna delay or cost us.
Well, and from our perspective, it didn't make a whole lot of sense for us to put a lot of work into figuring that out until
I understand.
we had some indication that the board is interested in moving forward, so, if the board takes action on this today, then we have direction to take a closer look and see if we can figure out.
Well, in all due respect to the work that's been done here, a project of this size to get off the ground, a year from now is pretty aggressive and pretty, optimistic, I'll put it that way. And, I think that there'll be more time to analyze those, funding sources going forward, and as I understand the funding, on this. It's a 50-50 cost share between the city and the county, up to $1 million per party. That's how I understand it. Would that be correct?
That's,
And not to exceed,
I'm sorry?
on a not to exceed basis.
that's up to a
Yes,
million, yeah, yep.
that's how I understand it, up to $1 million.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong,
You are correct.
okay?
Well, we got a motion and a second.
Is the motion,
It's on the table, yeah.
Yep.
are you good with the motion?
I'll vote for it.
Okay. I got a motion by Jeff and a second by Kurt. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. You got a lot of work to do going forward.
I know I'm in pain.
Next is review of the current Muscatine County ordinance regulating the operation of all-terrain vehicles and off-road utility vehicles in Muscatine County, as well as the current restricted Muscatine County roadways. Morning, Jim.
Morning. Nancy wanted the matter set for discussion today relative to the current county ATV, UTV ordinance, which of course the board passed a while back when the issue came up and things became fairly popular. Last July, there was some legislation that changed Iowa law relative to ATV, UTV operation. And I sent out a memo at that time that sort of explained the nuances of the law as it changed and any impact it might have on our current policy. Having said that, in the meantime, the city of Muscatine has now passed its own ATV, UTV ordinance, which of course was not in play at the time the county passed theirs. And so you have a few, what I would call connection issues or possibilities relative to roads the county has designated as non-usable for ATV, UTV purposes, which we previously identified. I think Brian said there was 11 of those around the entirety of the county, but several of them are around the city of Muscatine. And so the question was raised, what if anything did this legislation do that might require us to modify our ordinance? And a simple answer to the question is, really there's nothing. The ordinance in and of itself contained a conflict provision that says, should the law ever be changed in the future by the state of Iowa, that law would take effect and control and be of precedence in terms of us enforcing our county ordinance. So we had what I would call pretty much a legislation savings clause in it, realizing that the legislature might someday change the ordinance, which of course they did in an effort to make it more uniform in its application across the state in terms of licensure and requirements of the vehicles to be operating on a public highway. It really hasn't changed anything with regard to what we previously did in designating the roadways. We can still do all unpaved roads. They can be used on if the county wants to do that. If it's a paved road, undivided 2-lane highway, again, that's okay with the state as long as the county wants to do that. And so if there's a desire of the board to change the paved road limitations that we previously enacted, I think we, like we did last time, we would need to have the engineer review the situation and come back to the board and make a determination as to whether or not it made sense to change any of those designated roadways. I'll give you an example of one. There's the short section between the city limits of Muscatine and on G28 and Burlington Road that's currently closed for UTV, ATV access. That being said, the law also allows for crossing of those type roads in limited circumstances where it's the most direct line and so forth. So really, at the end of the day, I don't see a need to change it other than if the board wants to designate fewer or additional roads that they would either allow or prohibit access upon. That makes sense.
So what you're saying, Jim, the roads that are restricted could be used if you're going, say, a farmer from field to field. I think that's in the state law anyway, isn't it?
Right.
And our county and the city reflects that, probably.
You can do the most direct route, you know, so
Scott owns fields on both sides of the county.
if you had to drive across the road.
He can take 30 miles a direct route.
Well, I think the roads that I've heard the most comment on was that section of Burlington Road.
Yeah.
Which sounds like by the state code, that you could, since city of Muscatine allows it, you could go from city limits to Burlington Road with your ATV, UTV per state code right now, even though we have that restriction.
Is that-
Because that's the most direct route, there's no other connecting road.
For operators, there's a lot of confusion about that,
Yeah.
how it's worded. Now, me personally, until we maybe get some more feedback otherwise, I would like to see no restrictions on any of them, but I know roads, certainly like Stewart Road, that section in front of Lutheran Homes, Mulberry, that I'm personally travel on a lot, and I think that the operators, it would be nice to have those restricted. I can't speak for some of them up in the northern part of the county and some of those other areas, but
Have any problem with it? All right.
Well, I understand why the two up in the northwest part, Garfield and the little X30 that goes to Downey, because of the highway traffic that goes to the interstate there,
Correct.
on both of those roads, from
Yeah.
Liberty Foods from Iowa City uses that short section, and I understand why they wanna keep them off there. It isn't, I don't know what Cedar County does from Downey north, or from the county line north on, I think it's X30, I can't read it, it's a little small.
On Garfield there.
Yeah, well, not Garfield, the next one,
Oh,
up to Downey.
Downey,
But what's Cedar County do you know on theirs?
I do not know.
Okay, I
So,
just,
so the reason these roads were restricted originally, was due to traffic counts. Almost all of them, either the entire road has over 2,000 vehicles per day, or sections of it have that. And a lot of these roads also experience a lot of high semi-truck traffic. Nothing's really changed as far as traffic counts since these were evaluated for the original ordinance. I know that Keith had a lot to do with this. I did not, so I had to do a little bit of research. But I think the restricted roads, there was actually quite a bit larger number of them, and this was kind of whittled down to what our office felt like were the most important ones to restrict.
some of my pushback, unless I can understand something different that I may not understand, is every one of these roads that we have closed, pedestrians can walk, bicycles can go, motorcycles can go. These ATVs, in my opinion, are a real small percentage of users compared to some of those other things. And I can't imagine why we would restrict them anywhere and we don't restrict any of the other kind of traffic. I mean, you can walk down the side of the road, you can ride your bicycle down the shoulder of it. I think the responsibility of the operators can handle the situation, even when there's truck traffic. I think they can exist with them, like these other bicycles or pedestrians or motorcycles. So to me, the restrictions don't really serve a great purpose. I think it just makes it confusing. I mean, operators are currently driving down Stewart Road. They're currently driving in front of Lutheran Homes. They're currently driving on Mulberry, and most often the law enforcement is just letting them go. Because you're gonna pull them over to say, are you in direct route from where you're supposed to go? There's just so much confusion for law enforcement, and
In our number of contacts, we've had the ATV, UTV ordinance for 4 years now.
I think we enacted in 2021, maybe,
It came into
20, I think it was.
November
I
of
think it was
2020, so
November of 2020.
not quite 3 years.
Our contact numbers haven't fluctuated one way or the other. I mean, we have limited contact with them through the course of the year. We haven't had any major incidents involving them. Like I said, we just had I don't know it's like a Jeep run, but with UTVs, a couple weeks ago. No major incidents out of that. So our contact with them, since the county's ordinance inception, is very limited. So, and they do travel those areas still. Initially, I was contacted probably 6 months ago about the G28 section. I was asked about the Isaac, between the bypass and Bayfield Road, was asked about Mulberry. bicycle traffic, on those roads every single day. Probably more than what you're gonna see ATV, UTV traffic. But
You know, to be honest, most of the people that are running the UTVs don't know the safety equipment they're supposed to have. You know, 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, SMV sign. The people that are selling these units are glossing over that, you know, they wanna sell a $30,000 rig and get it out the door. And when I talk to people that are running them, they're going, oh, yeah, I can go faster than 35. Yeah, you can, but the state, and they go, well, I didn't know that. And most of the people don't know what the rules are that are out there that they're supposed to abide by, whether they're state, county, or Muscatine.
The 35-mile-an-hour speed limits of Muscatine,
State.
State.
that's
It's
state.
state.
If you've ever driven one on a gravel road,
They're-
35 mile an
they
hour
are.
is God's plenty.
That, I agree with you.
On a gravel road, it's a God's plenty.
I agree with that.
Or about any road it is, depending on the tire.
Yeah, they have upgraded tires on them to where they are a little safer.
Well, I know when we originally, we had a lot of discussion, we had a number of groups talk to the board during the process when we did this. And what we committed to them was we would go a few years, you know, we put it in with a number of restrictions, and we'd go a couple of years and just see what happened, and, you know, we felt, I think the board's intent at that time was to possibly loosen up the restrictions somewhat, if we saw good behavior, you know, responsible action, and, you know, so I'm at the point now where I think, I haven't heard anything from law enforcement, I haven't heard anything from anyone else, we haven't seen accidents, I think people have been very responsive, and I'm okay with loosening up the restrictions, you know. Do you wanna take it off all roads? You know, I don't, you know, always the concern, and you know, the county engineer, and I, you know, we do have, you know, we've had quite a few emails recently about Pettibone, you know, where people are very concerned about, you know, traffic on Pettibone and the safety of traffic on Pettibone, and, you know, Stewart gets more cars and trucks than Pettibone, and if we start that, are we gonna open something up? I doubt it. I mean, I think people are using it as they would, so I could go either way on it. I don't feel strongly
Well,
one way or another.
since spring has come, I mean, I see them on literally every main street in the city, inside the city limits. And, everybody that I see operating them, operate them just like a small car pickup, you know, in that regard. And I'm the same way, in regard to being able to, I mean, you get out in the county and it's a piece of equipment that is, in many cases, not much different than a piece of agricultural equipment, only smaller per se. And, you know, it's up to the individual, what they feel, they're comfortable with, in regard to any road they're driving on. Myself personally, I'd be a little hard pressed to take North Mulberry and to go to Moscow that way with the amount of gravel trucks and that travel that. But that's just me. It would be up to the individual, because as it stands right now, you're still allowed to reach your destination on the shortest route using a restricted piece of roadway. So, you know, I'm not dyed in the wool on they shouldn't be on any road ever.
So I wonder if you know, in my mind, then, does the county, you know, remove our resolution and go to the state law? Let state law govern? Is that the simplest thing to do?
That would be the simplest thing to do.
And I think it would still cover.
There's still rules that, what we intended to cover was proper safety equipment, proper operation, speed limits, et cetera, are all covered now in state legislation, so, and then I don't know, from a law enforcement, does that make it simpler for law enforcement that you have one rule that you're doing?
yes.
Yeah, the problem is that when you have that accident, and let's all face it, it's
It'll-
every time.
It's gonna happen.
It'll happen.
You're gonna have to bear the brunt of folks who feel like, you went too far. That's not a legal thing, that's just a practical, reality of the situation that you have to deal with. And be committed to leaving the way that, you know, leaving that way. You know, I think the state set it up so that you could determine, a county can determine for itself, the roadways. You know, the state law only really addresses the state highways. And so if you were going to do that, rather than just scrapping the entire ordinance, you just remove any restrictions on any secondary or county roads that aren't otherwise prohibited by state law. So that way you still had those limitations in place, because state law doesn't deal with those limitations in the same way. And it's almost, doesn't really need to on the one hand, but on the other hand, I think the county needs to speak to it and have spoken to it.
I like that.
Okay.
But what do we need to do? If that's what the consensus is.
What's the desire of the board? I don't,
The consensus of the board, it sounds to me like,
we've done the review, so is it, or do we wanna direct staff to remove the restrictions? So we would leave our ordinance in place and just remove the appendix A, I believe it is, that has restricted roadways. And then
And so in order to make that change, we're amending an ordinance, so we have to go through the public
3
hearing
readings.
process and 3 readings. And I would start that process
I think it
when
makes
I get
sense.
back from vacation.
Can we start that process?
4 days plus
I
2
asked
weeks,
if we
that
can
is.
start that process.
Yes.
Okay,
Well, we don't.
all right, well, is that, we're not on for action, but is that consensus of the board?
For me.
Okay,
okay,
I think we have consensus, good.
very good. Thank you, everyone.
So just for the public watching, that means we have a public process we have to go through, which will require 3 readings, which won't begin until June sometime.
We'll have to have the public
So
hearing and
you're
3
probably
readings.
not gonna have it changed until July at the
July, early July.
early July at the earliest, so.
But it's going in the right direction for them.
Okay.
Okay. Next is discussion and possible decision regarding uncontrolled intersections in Muscatine County.
When go ahead, Scott, sorry.
Brian, do you wanna speak to this first, or,
I would love to.
okay,
Thank you. Unfortunately, the last time this was spoken about in a board meeting, I was unable to attend that day. I did have some thoughts that I wanted to share. There was a lot of discussion about potential policy. That raised some concerns for me. Any type of policy that would be drafted, it would almost have to reference the MUTCD, which is a national document. It's this big book right here. It's kind of like the Bible for traffic control devices. And it would reference, using the MUTCD for the procedure for evaluating intersections. So, with that being said, if a policy were to spell out additional constraints, such as no uncontrolled intersections, that would deviate from what our procedure, our MUTCD, prescribes. And maybe Jim can elaborate on this more, but I feel like that would open the county and myself up to some potential liability.
Yeah, I think that Brian and I have had a chance to discuss this a bit since we last spoke and Brian was not able to attend the meeting. Creating a policy that would be different than what is in the manual, to me, is obviously problematic. Because when you create a policy that's different from what's been established and used, you create the possibility that you don't have everything covered or you don't do something particularly well. And so I think from a standpoint of a policy, the policy that we have that's in play now is probably what we should continue forward with from a legal standpoint. Then it becomes a question for the board, just a financial decision, and what the board really wants to do with these particular intersections, if anything. As far as that decision is concerned, I know there was discussion last time about doing part of them and part of them the next year and the next year and the next year. My opinion would be, if you're going to do them, I would do them. I think when you start picking and choosing which ones you do, and about that time there's an accident and somebody said you're gonna change this, you didn't change this, and here we go. And so, to me, it really is a question of, is the system broken? Or, if it's not broken, are we just gonna make the decision to control all uncontrolled intersections as a public policy decision in Muscatine County? And that's really, to me, those are the two issues. Then Brian has clear direction in terms of if they're all gonna be controlled, then really the policy really doesn't matter anymore, because we're not gonna do that, we're not gonna do that analysis.
Exactly, we would have to draft an entire procedure and policy.
So that would be my 2 cents.
So I'm trying to reconcile the comments a little bit, Jim. I'm a little confused. So the policy our policy is we use the Bible, I'll call it the handbook. That's how we evaluate the intersection.
Yes.
And you're saying then we may have, maybe an option to consider if it's a desire of the board to have some indication of liability on all, or responsibility on all intersections. That would be a different public policy possibly, not necessarily how you look at them, or what do we,
Well, there's the policy of how do you analyze an uncontrolled intersection. And the current process is what everybody uses, but one county in the state of Iowa that's made their decision to control all uncontrolled intersections. And so in my mind, there's no reason to create another policy. We have a policy. The decision is, does the board want to just control them all? And we don't have the issue any longer, we don't have the application any
Yes,
longer.
but the concern with controlling all of them is that using our current procedure, there will be some intersections, I can almost guarantee, that will continue to be uncontrolled. The prescriptions of what we do does not say every intersection shall be controlled. It does allow for uncontrolled intersections.
Then how do you determine those, Brian?
You go
Traffic
through-
counts?
It's an engineering study. You go through, you look at accidents, site distances, any traffic counts, any traffic count changes.
Let me ask, when you make determinations about, let's say there's a given four-way intersection out there that's completely uncontrolled. Does the Bible, because I keep forgetting its name, I like that. I'm gonna use Bible. Does Jeff's Bible here, does it say when you should put in just controlled from two, or should make it a four-way? I mean, there's various levels of control.
It does give guidelines as to where to install it.
So if we make a policy that says control all intersections, we're still presumably falling back on the Bible for determining how to control a given intersection,
Yes, but its prescriptions might say no science needed.
which is
No
weird.
control is needed.
So yeah, we might say, Muscatine County might say, control the intersection according to the standards of the Bible. And the
Right.
Bible would say, well, for this kind of intersection, you don't need any. And I suppose our policy could be, if the Bible doesn't provide it, put in at least a two-way control.
That's a possibility.
Does that give you concern, Jim, when we start?
Well, anytime we
Tinkering.
deviate from the policy, you're gonna create that exposure. Nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And so, to
Unless
me,
you four-way everything, right?
right, unless you just do it across the board.
Maximal. So you can either do what the Bible says, you can either three or four-way everything, or you can have some hodgepodge in the middle. Is that what I'm hearing? And hodgepodge leaves us exposed.
Well, certainly more than the black and white on either end of the spectrum.
Right.
The roads that are currently signed, those were determined by traffic counts, by studies in the past, or were they just,
Probably not.
Honestly, it's so long ago, I can't speak to that. There it could have been traffic counts, it could have been maybe some permanent, obstruction that was there that is no longer, some people say, well, why is this one have stopping? There could have been a barn, there could have been, some permanent vegetation, the geometry of the road, like the back slope could have been regraded to allow for more sight distance, and this stop sign was left.
Do you have any idea how many total intersections we have in the county?
No,
Thousands?
probably.
So, to be super kosher, you'd need to be reevaluating each of those intersections all the time.
Yes, I guess, yes.
And typically that's driven by accident. I mean, if you have,
Yes, so, I mean, saying that our current procedure does not say we don't evaluate an intersection usually. If the request happens, or if we see or hear a string of accidents, we can evaluate an intersection.
And I know this is a little off topic, so it's probably more of a question for Jim, but do we know what the current state law is regarding special exemptions to loads and drivers, like as I understand in the accident that prompted all this, we had two minors essentially driving CDL, what would otherwise be CDL required loads that were authorized only through state exemption.
right, that licensure is one part. The travel part of it is the vehicle, you yield to the vehicle on your right. That's the state law.
Right.
And so that's the one that assigns responsibility and liability as between those two drivers, even under those circumstances of relaxed licensure for agricultural purposes.
At the end of the day, the law still stands. You yield to the right.
Right,
So
I
they're
mean, and
not
that's the-
uncontrolled, they're just
They're,
unsigned.
yeah, it's a slang term. They're really not uncontrolled, but
It's not
people,
anarchy.
people say it's not signed and therefore it's uncontrolled. It really is still controlled.
So, I had a motion written up based on Nathan's request, and Jeff mentioned that he would like there to be a policy. With this new information today, that changes the motion I was gonna make a little bit.
Sure.
But so my motion is still, I'm gonna make a motion right now to control all the intersections in Muscatine County. My original motion was going to, allocate 15,000 from the ARPA funds that we had remaining in the entrance to pay for the 14 four-way stops this year. And then over the course of the next 4 years, have Brian put 10,000 in his budget to wrap that up. Now, Jim mentioned that we shouldn't do that, and we should do it all at once. So my motion would be to control all the intersections, which I think is gonna cost, if we do all of them at once, my figures is around 55 or 60,000.
If we do the minimal controls.
If,
So, but
I'm
if,
talking the minimum, that'd be the minimal, blocking on a four-way doing one direction, which would be stop ahead and stop sign that'd be 4 signs. And on the three-ways, I was thinking the single direction, if we did a stop ahead and a stop sign. Which my figures, I think were around $60,000. So if we make a motion to do all that up front, there isn't enough money in that ARPA fund to do that. That would have to be a split between the ARPA fund and that heritage fund that we have, maybe. Which we got some money left in that fund, don't we? That's some of the,
It'll be 55,000, we're still waiting to receive that 50,000, so I don't know if we'd allocate it before we receive it.
oh,
but
we
we're
don't have it
supposed
all?
to. We don't have 50,000 of it yet, we
How many's
anticipate we
available,
will.
how much is available today? Cause I know we got some
5,000.
potentially
Well,
locked up.
Right, we have 45,000 that have already been allocated,
so 5
So 5
available unencumbered,
unencumbered with 50 to come this year yet.
theoretically.
So, the funds make it a little more complicated then, if we're gonna do it all in the first year, which
Do we have the manpower to do it all in the first year?
probably not. I'm gonna stick to my motion then. Here's my motion, guys. I'm gonna make a motion to control all intersections in Muscatine County. The motion to allocate funds in amount of 15,000 for remaining entrance from the ARPA funds to install stop signs at the needed 14 four-way intersections in Muscatine County in the 2023 calendar year. To complete the 14 this year with that money from the ARPA funds. The motion is also to give the county, to have the county engineer add 10,000 a year to his budget for the next 4 years to complete around 25 three-way intersections each year until complete.
how does it prioritize which intersections or go first?
It's gonna have to be under the direction of Brian on what he thinks. He's gonna have to make that own assumption.
I really don't have much to go off of. There's been 8 accidents in the last 10 years and none of them have been the same intersection.
I mean, I
There's
think that puts him in a
123
position of
intersections.
liability to make a decision. I mean, he can offer direction. I think the board would have to approve that. I think would be a better way to do it. But, basically directing any of our staff to make a decision in policy is a dangerous game, I think. And I know Jim just stepped out. But having him decide how to ad hoc administer policy, which is our job, I don't think is fair. I mean, maybe you're
So
comfortable
you
with
want,
that.
so you want us to pick what intersections to start with?
I think that would be the only way to do it. But I think that'd also be a terrible idea.
Well, I'm okay with that if I got a list of intersections, but I mean, it's gonna be a crapshoot on which ones
That's the
I say
problem. All
do
this is
these
the same
10.
issue. All this
It's
is
gonna be a crapshoot for him to do.
No.
He's just gonna have to,
Yeah.
he's just gonna have to pick
Well, here's what I
25 a
see.
year and finish them all.
Here's what I see. I see this motion as being a direct contradiction to the policy in the Bible per se and the guidelines of the state. That's what I see.
Then you probably shouldn't support the motion.
That'd be a great idea.
We have a motion on the floor, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Do we have a second? We got a motion, we got a second.
Then we can vote.
Now we vote. All in favor of,
Can we have that read back?
yeah,
So-
because I'm not sure what it is.
The motion is to control all intersections in Muscatine County. The motion is to allocate funds in the amount of $15,000 from the remaining entrance money from our ARPA funds to install stop signs at the needed 14 four-way intersections in the county in the 2023 calendar year. The motion also states for the county engineer to add $10,000 a year to his budget for the next 4 years to complete around 25 three-way intersections each year until complete.
Do we need to make any kind of findings under ARPA in order to be able to justify the encumbrance of those funds for ARPA?
No, since it's the ARPA interest, we can use that on any
Okay.
government purpose.
Okay. Well, I've got a motion by Danny, a second by Kurt on Danny's motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. The motion has failed 3-2. Next item is items with County Engineer Brian Horowski. First is discussion and possible action to approve various utility permits.
Sorry, trying to get my stuff in order here.
Yeah, it wasn't really fair to you to be right behind this either. We'll get there.
Alrighty, we have one utility permit today. It is from Liberty Communications, out of West Branch, Iowa. They're requesting to bore a new fiber optic cable, an interduct to service house 1638 on 100th Street. They're just pretty much going right under the road. Pretty straightforward.
I'll move the approval.
Second.
Got a motion by Jeff, second by Kurt. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to approve the purchase of one 2024 semi-tractor.
So, does everyone have this?
It
I've
should
got
have
it.
been in their packet.
Yep.
I even got pictures today.
That's awesome.
I don't like the color.
Oh, I don't think we get to choose on that.
That'd be better than Wendling's. Have you seen their trucks?
I guess it hides the dust.
Yeah, okay, I guess that's,
Thanks, Brian.
Alrighty, so this truck is to replace a truck that was in an accident. The truck eventually got totaled out. So that's why you see the insurance claim shown there. And this truck does exist, so we're very fortunate that we were able to find one. We did call around. This is pretty much the only truck that we could find without ordering one. It is a new truck. It's very similar to the one that was totaled out. There's just some slight changes. Nothing really all that major. So you see there that with the insurance claim being applied, you see the final dollar amount there on the bottom.
This is the truck you use to haul your side dump, move your excavators, et cetera.
Yes, we use it mostly to haul rock.
Okay.
So the 28,000 is what the bottom line is.
Yes.
After insurance, okay.
I'd move the approval.
I got a motion by Jeff, second by Nathan. All in favor of, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes. Project updates.
Oh, yes, so our office has been very busy past few weeks, I guess past month or two. Our tide culvert projects with IBC, the 150th Street box is complete minus the dirt work. They're about 50% of the way done on dirt work. Hopefully they'll have a good week this week, and here sometime in June, we can wrap that one up. The Hawley Street culvert, they're doing their last pour hopefully today, and once it gets some cure time on it and gets strength, they'll start backfilling that one. Then we have another box culvert, which is on 135th Street, just east of Western. That's also Iowa Bridge and Culvert. They have not indicated yet when exactly they plan to start that one. Then our HMA resurfacing project, which is with Manats, all the paving is complete, so that the roads that got paved in this project were Bayfield, North Isaac from I can't think of the name of that subdivision. The seal coat portion of North Isaac up to 180th, and then 180th there along the golf course, and then Steel Mill Road between Moscow and Wilton. So hopefully this week we'll get them striped, and that project will be in the rearview mirror. So that's what I had for a project update. If there was any questions.
Any questions? No? Anything other?
Nope, not today.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is discussion of possible action to approve ordinance 05222301, amending the Muscatine County zoning ordinance relating to local meat lockers and/or butcher shops on the third and final reading. You have some input on this, Eric?
Just to report that I've not received any additional feedback since our public hearing, specifically on the issue of the gravel road versus paved road issues. I apologize, Nancy sent me the final draft ordinance there late last week. I was out about a day and a half, but I did review it over. What's in your packets is the accurate, what I believe to be the accurate final language for this amendment.
I've only had one call on this, and this was prior to this whole process taking place. And that individual was hopeful that we'd be able to expand the lockers in the county because of the need,
Yeah, I think it's
which there is.
I think it's gonna be a good thing, and we've got adequate safeguards
Yeah.
incorporated.
Okay, I'll move the approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Nathan. This is a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to approve renewal of a Class B wine, Class C carryout beer, Class E, LE, and Sunday sales permit for Casey's Marketing Company, DBA Casey's General Store, 2472, 1334 Highway 22, Nichols, Iowa, 52766.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nathan, second by Kurt. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the May 15, 2023 regular meeting.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Danny. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Correspondence. Jeff, you have anything?
Yeah, I was out last week, so on the 9th, I attended the housing council, and on the 8th, I'm sorry, I had about 8 calls on uncontrolled intersections. That was it.
Okay. Nathan?
Same on the uncontrolled, Jeff, as I was also out. Excuse me. Same with the housing council on, what was that, the 9th? On Friday, the 19th, we had the rescheduled meeting of the 7th Judicial Board of Corrections. And that, I believe, is it.
That was it? Okay. I had one contact in regard to 245th. That's all I had. Danny?
I had a few calls and emails from a Steve Crackle. He's out in Moscow, had some issues with an approach concern. I talked to Brian 2 or 3 times on it. Brian spoke to him, and I think we've got him as happy as we can get him at the moment, right?
Was just condition of an approach, or?
Well, they repaid it with some asphalt, and he was concerned on how big the drop-off was gonna be, and we're gonna fill that in with gravel, and he should be happy when we're done.
Thanks.
Kurt?
I had about 4 calls on the uncontrolled
Okay.
intersections also.
Okay, very good. Committee reports. Jeff, do you have anything?
Yeah, on the 10th, I had the EMA Commission, and on the 15th, I had the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region Board meeting, monthly board meeting.
Okay. Nathan, you have any?
I apologize, I gave the District 7 correctional under correspondence, but it should have been under meetings.
Okay.
And I forgot a couple, excuse me, correspondence. I had a contact, a week and a half ago from, individual in the county asking about, property line issues with highway easements and rights of way, and, referring to both Eric and, Brian. They did just a fine job, I think, responding. I appreciate that. Also got a lot of, good, feedback, from various people, various government units about, Chris Jasper and the work done on the, of all parties involved with the flood
Okay.
management.
All right. On May 15th, I had Conservation Board, and the board approved the building that they're looking at down at Deep Lakes and going out for bid. Bids are due to be in on, I believe, June 2nd, so we'll see how that shakes out. On May 17th, I had Riverbend Transit. As well, on May 17th, I had the Board of Health. And on Friday the 19th, I went to the 3D printing of the first 3D printed home in Iowa, and watched that process for about an hour. Kind of interesting as that came to be. And that's all I had.
On 5/15, I attended the Zoom meeting for Mississippi Valley Workforce Development. That's their full board meeting. On the 19th, I had the bi-weekly office hours for Mississippi Valley Workforce Development. On the 19th, I also completed a CEO onboarding that's required for all the members each year. And then I also attended on the 19th that 3D home building with the Community Foundation with Scott.
Okay. Kurt?
On Thursday, the 18th, I had Muscatine County Fair Board meeting.
All right, very good. Items with the administration office. First is discussion and possible action to approve resolution 05222301, authorizing early partial redemption of general obligation county purpose and refunding bonds, Series 2016A.
I'll move the approval.
I got a motion by Jeff,
Second.
second by Nathan. This is a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Nathan? I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is discussion of possible action to accept a proposal from Renaissance Historical Exteriors for restoration of the built-in gutter, cornice ledge, and steep slate roof, and replacement of the low slope roof on the courthouse. And that information is in your packet.
This is one of the items that we've approved for capital budget already, right?
Right.
This is funded partially, $1 million of ARPA, and the remainder's capital project, right?
We transferred it over from building maintenance and repair into capital projects to
Yeah.
cover the rest.
And we have, what did we have budgeted?
We had $1 million in ARPA and then 1.2 from building maintenance.
So we had 2.1, 2.2.
2.2.
2-2?
So I've got a number of questions. So it looks like they gave us some options on the built-in, on the gutter liner and the cornice repair. So kind of to repair it historically accurate, it's copper, sweated in, do all that stuff. What's the expected life of that? I mean, it was done in 1912 and now we're replacing it here in, so 100 years and
For what I understand, it can go beyond like 50 years.
50?
Whether whether.
So the 1.1 there, and then there's a, looks like there's an alternative that they put in as, which is to do it with PVC versus the copper. And that's 867,000 versus the 1.1 million. Is there a life expectancy difference? Does the PVC have a, do we worry about ozoning and any of that? Does it give the same life
It's the
expectancy?
same thing with both for the other discussions I have with them, it's a lifespan of 50 years, so they couldn't really differentiate one from the other. Of course, they recommend like typical maintenance to it, like power washing, ever needed, and things like that, just to show this thing. I don't know how, but that'll see if you wanna prolong it beyond 50 years.
What's your opinion? I mean, copper, the copper we know typically lasts even longer than 50 years. PVC, I'm always concerned about plastics.
I say that if you fully want to go with the historical view, you go with copper.
Now, we did take historic funds initially when we did the roof on that a number of years ago. Are we under any obligation to maintain historic stuff on this, Nancy or Kayla, do you know? Or, I think usually it's a 5-year grant. on those.
Yeah.
So we're probably okay. So we could do either. Okay. And then I was a little bit confused on the roofs. So it sounds like we're gonna peel 3 feet up and reinstall the synthetic slate? Or is there an option, did I read that there's an option to just, that you're gonna replace all that synthetic slate, or no? What am I,
I wasn't really deep into that, but that was a specific option with the entire thing, just to secure it. Was the most recommended.
Right, the part two, that first option, I believe puts back slate. And then the second option is to use a composite slate material instead.
okay, so is it the entire roof that we see? That's what I'm trying to
Yes.
understand.
The entire s-
Option one, part two, so we're talking about the steep slope slate roof. And I'm assuming that means everything except for the flat where the mechanicals and stuff set, right? And that's like a TPO roof up there?
At least just, what's the name of this thing? Membrane.
And we're not messing with that, I didn't see.
Isn't that,
No, there's no
Yeah.
really meaningful.
No issue with that, yeah. Yeah, they're just flashing to the PVC TPO, okay. So the 574 replaces with a natural slate, everything on the roof. And so I could go to 495 to put back the same stuff that's up there. Only get their staggers right and do all that, okay. And then, where's the low slope roof, where is that?
I'm not sure how they worded, but we got three stages there. The one is, what you can see me over there, the dome, and the main.
Okay. So if we did I should have added
the
all
low
this
slope
up.
roof is in your picture, it's the darkest part.
Oh, okay,
That's
that's-
considered
okay,
the low
then.
slope roof.
Okay,
That helps you.
I don't know if I looked at the picture, Nancy, that's kinda stupid, wasn't it? I was looking at all the numbers and reading all the stuff and, so what's the total? Did I see? I got so many questions on the,
I think it added up to 1.1.
1.833 if you do the first option on all three sections,
1.833,
right?
and if we go to the lower cost alternatives, we could save about 400,000, right? So we go to about 1.4. And we budgeted 2.2. And this covers all the scaffolding, all the removal, all the debris, any damage done to the side. We did the sidewalks, so hopefully we won't get any damage this time, right? Cause we put in pretty good sidewalks
They
up
can
there.
solve it.
So the only TPO we'd have would be that low slope up top. I would like to save $400,000, but, I'm not sure that, it would be interesting to have the roofing guys tell me, the gutter guys, whether they believe the TPO, whether the liner gutter is really better than the copper that would have originally been there. Cause that's performed well for close to 100 years, and we know it just performs.
Now, the only observation, may I,
Yeah.
the one is, we tried to, it was tried before, to save some money on the repairs and everything, and the looks that we have right now, and we end up with bad gutters. And those bad gutters been damaging inside the building, as you know. And, we have the ability and the possibility to do everything at once, correct? We don't have to worry about that for 50 to 60 years.
Yeah, cause when we did the courtroom, didn't we had a section, we had to do some temporary repairs, like, where there was damage in the wall inside the courtroom and down
We had
there.
to do temporary repairs in the outside and the inside too, to see what visible damage to it.
Cause these are the integral gutters, so if you're
Yes.
familiar with integral gutters, they're part of the roof system, they come down the walls. So if it ever starts leaking, we destroy the interior of the building too. And we had that happen when we did the courthouse, we found a major corner back on that side that they had to do quite extensive repairs on that we hadn't planned, in our project, so.
I don't think it makes sense to get penny wise on this.
Yeah, so I guess I would be in favor of moving forward with the primary with the copper, going back to the slate, doing it the way it was originally intended and done. We've tried the cheaper, I think when we did the original roof, we tried some stuff and obviously it failed. We got a little cheap and we're paying for it now.
Well, I'm certainly convinced that the copper will outlast that PVC membrane hands down for the amount of years that we're looking at going forward. I think it's probably money well spent, in my opinion, for the size of the project that it is.
So what do we need? We need a motion to authorize the chair to sign. Is that
We
the
need,
chair?
we need a motion to accept the proposal, and then, this company indicated to me that probably in a couple of weeks, they'll have a contract ready to come back, and then you'll sign a contract with them. I will note that typically on a project of this size, we would go out for bids. There was a letter in your, a memo in your packet from Mike Nolan documenting
Right.
our attempt to find suitable, appropriate contractors for this and our inability to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there, we still, that still leaves us about 400,000 for OOs, because we don't know the condition of the subroof.
Right.
In many areas, we weren't able to drill and core it, we don't know.
We expect to find some problems there, which is why we budgeted the 2.1.
Sure.
Okay, so I will make a motion, we accept the proposal by whatever they are, Renaissance, and thank Mike for his, letter.
Okay, I've got a motion by Jeff. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Danny with a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Anything other, Nancy?
Just to remind you that next Monday's a holiday, so there isn't a board meeting. And then also that I'm leaving on vacation Friday morning, and I won't be back until June 12th, I believe.
Okay, very good, thank you. Next is receive information from county employees. Do I have any county employees that wish to address the board at this time on any issue?
I guess if we're moving forward with this courthouse project, I'd like some clarification. Are we gonna be, my office is expected to do some, you know, like work with Oscar on owner's rep of it, you know, managing that project? Is that gonna be your expectation as well? Or, because we've never really got back together to talk after, you know.
Yeah, I think we need to discuss that, I think that, well, we won't have contract probably till,
Probably not
Till
till
you're back.
Probably not till I get back, and we need to get up, we'll need to get on their schedule, so this isn't a project that's gonna start.
I only ask because the preliminary review of their proposal, I guess, making some assumptions that we might be involved to some extent. I had some initial concerns because it is such a specialized, project. I went over it with some of my staff and they feel like if, working with Jim and giving, if we have good binding contract language, that we could probably, you know, supervise it. But we would want that time to be able to sit down with Jim, make sure the contract specifies clearly enough that we can follow exactly what they're doing and what they're not doing, so we're not behind the eight ball.
I think that, you know, just my 2 cents, the last few projects where you and your office have gotten involved and helped kinda Oscar, cause he's got his day-to-day fires to deal with, and help with that contractor liaison. I think that has helped us bring projects to closure better. Still think we have opportunities, but I think I would plan on that,
Yeah.
that we're gonna ask you and your office to be involved in that.
Well, and I know there was some frustration in working through some of these projects, and that's all part of what it is, because, finding, and finding problems, determining the solutions and so on can be frustrating. But I would concur with that I think it was,
We probably need to talk about in the project too, you know, Nancy, when we think about that, and what the board, what kind of leeway we're gonna give on change orders and stuff, cause projects like that, roofs in particular, you can run into minor change orders or, you know, like repairs that might be needed, that we'll wanna make sure staff have the ability to act quickly, and may not, we may wanna get some authorization there, because, you know, some things you don't, you know, you got a roof open, you don't wanna wait.
Don't wanna
for a
wait.
week for a meeting,
yeah,
so,
Yeah, especially when we have scaffolding up all over and.
yeah,
yeah.
that's probably cost you $100,000 to put the scaffolding up, so.
How long is the project supposed to take?
I was expecting up to a month and a half. If everything goes smooth, like
3 years.
Yeah. No way
A
it'll
month,
be a
give or
month.
take a couple of years, right?
Well,
All right. Very good. Anyone else, any county employees wish to speak to the board at this time? Seeing no one come forward. Next is receive comments from the public. Do I have anyone from the public that would like to speak? Chuck? State your name and address if you would, please. and-
My name is Chuck Hausman. My address is 2470 Edgewater Road. I reside there with Sheriff Phillips. And I just wanted to ask if there's any kind of a progress report that you can give the individuals concerned with the bridge situation down there. I know you and Kurt are on a committee, I believe the county attorney. We just would like to know what's going on. We send emails and I keep getting the response that you're under a gag order. And that's not quite right, I don't think, for an issue like this. And some people I spoke with on the phone don't think it's quite right.
Yeah. I don't believe we're under a gag order, but Jim Berry is the point person, as I,
And how did he get involved with road maintenance and stuff like that? Isn't he the,
he's the county attorney.
yeah, but what's the county attorney's responsibility? Prosecute?
Well,
legal
many,
defend-
there's,
County attorney tells everybody what their responsibility is.
yeah.
County attorney advises the board on all matters. So he is our,
I don't understand why this is being so secretive and we can't get any straight answers when we send an email. I send you an email, you did respond, but I also got a response from the county attorney. And I sent Kurt an email and he didn't answer it, the county attorney did. And you're, we elected you people to do.
And I can say this, I can say that the process is going forward, just as I responded to you, as the group gathers information, options, and cost of this particular project. And this is, all I can say is it's a complicated issue, and it takes some time. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay. And I had one other question. Back in 2009 and 10, taxpayers bought out 7 properties down there. Can you give me the numbers on what that cost to buy those properties and to have the cabins demolished and all that material removed? Because the taxpayers footed the bill. It wasn't all Muscatine County. I know there was FEMA money involved. We worked very closely with FEMA personnel at that time. And I think that was somebody's decision in this room to use that money for that purpose rather than fix the bridge.
I can probably speak to a little bit of that. There was 7 properties that were purchased through the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program after the 2008 flooding. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Program provides funding for purchase and demolition of structures that sustain damage during a declared disaster. The funding comes from 75% from FEMA, 10% from the state of Iowa, and 15% local shares. There are times when CDBG funds are also available that could cover local shares. I'd have to go back and look. I didn't finish out that project. I wasn't involved in the entirety of it to see if there was CDBG dollars at that
No,
time.
I can't
don't
remember.
know. I think there was some available because we also had a lot of just straight demolition projects at the time that did not involve buyouts, just heavily damaged structures that weren't eligible for FEMA buyout. Any hazard mitigation grant program purchase is strictly voluntary as well. It's not a decision that the county makes on behalf of the landowner. A person can choose to participate in it or not. And then what that does is it mitigates future potential damage in damage prone areas like floodplains. You go out on the west coast, it can be landslide areas, fault line areas. It's all about mitigating future costs, future loss of human life, future environmental. But again, it's a voluntary project that covers the purchase and demolition and conversion to green space for forever.
And, okay, then, I realize it was voluntary. I've heard you say that it was supposed to apply to permanent residences of those buyouts. And 2 of them were, 5 of them weren't. And could you, associate any cost savings with this whole transaction? What has the county got for that money?
Well, again, this was a voluntary program, people that
That's
did
not
not
my
want to.
question. Show me some dollar signs that says that this action on your behalf benefited the people of Muscatine County.
Well, there's a bunch of structures that are no longer there that were heavily damaged and.
Were you tasked with any financial burden from those structures?
Financial, I'm not understanding your question.
Was anybody asking the county to come in there and give them money to tear them down, or?
Yeah, the people, it was a voluntary program, they did not have to sell their
All those
property.
properties would have eventually sold to somebody, and there'd still be taxes being paid on.
Sure, but that's a choice that the homeowners made at that time was to participate in that buyout.
I understand why they sold out, because most of them either doubled or tripled their money, in some cases quadrupled their money from what they had invested in those properties. I would assume that sooner or later, we're gonna get some kind of an answer out of this committee, what direction you're heading as far as taking care of that bridge. I told the engineer they've done a great job fixing the road back up. A couple of our people have helped on that, but that bridge is eventually gonna cause more problems for you guys. It's gonna come to a point where I've heard them talk about filing for damages. If we can't get to our home anymore, I guess I have to file for damages, or Sharon does. And that, to me, looks like that would cost the county more in the long run if everybody down there did that versus replacing the bridge. I've said my piece.
Okay, because that, what you said is exactly what I'd responded. We're gathering information, options and costs, and what you asked for is exactly what we're doing.
When can you give us a progress update?
Can't answer that.
All right. Been nice talking.
Do I have anyone else that, from the public that would like to address the board at this time? Seeing no one come forward, it is 10:38 and we are adjourned. Thank you.